Nigeria Info. I am Kala Dakurubatibu. Time check 10 minutes gone past the hour of 5. I've got a guest via the phone, and we want to look at another legal matter, something you and I talked about briefly while we're looking at the big stories on Friday. It has to do with the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Once again, good afternoon to you, and thank you for listening, or should I say tuning in to 92.3 Nigeria Info. All right, so my conversation has got to do with the conversation surrounding intelligence agencies in the United States, about 6 of them, obeying a Freedom of Information court order to release documents on the president, or documents relating to the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But before I get into the details of the conversation, allow me to introduce my guest. I've got a lawyer and a professor of law at the Rivers State University. I'm talking about Professor Ritchard Nwokocha. Professor, welcome on the show. Greetings to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, Nigerians.
All right. So we want to talk about, the report that has got to do with releasing documents of the president relating to accusations and allegations of drug use, allegations of identity theft, and all of that in the United States as related to the president. And it's been on. It's been a part of our national debate for a while now. It's been trending on social media. It's and now it's made it to mainstream media. It's in court, done by Greenspan, Mr. Greenspan, and David Udeyi. They went to United States using the Freedom of Information Act, and they asked for, and the court has ordered it. Even though I reported via, as seen on the Sun, it was on my show, and I said that the president has filed a motion to move against the release of those documents. But however, I want us to talk about this from a constitutional perspective, given the fact that the president has got immunity. Pending any adverse impact on the president, how will this affect the presidency or the governance structure in Nigeria? Over to you.
Let's. I think the questions are in 2 parts.
Okay.
How will this affect the president? With respect to the contestations that are on now,
yeah,
I doubt that it will have any serious impact. As you already know, any evidence that was not led at the Court of Appeals cannot come here, except in exceptional circumstances where the Supreme Court can grant permission for a party on appeal to it to file fresh evidence concerning that matter. So anything obtained now after will be subject to that rule, and whether the Supreme Court will consider it relevant enough to the issue of whether a person won the election or did not win the election and all that. But all of that will be at the discretion of the Supreme Court, which will decide either way to exercise that discretion based on its assessment of what is brought before it, when it is brought before it by an application such as Vice President Atiku filed concerning the earlier documents.
The CSU documents.
To Chicago University. Yes.
All right. Okay. So, now, the reason why I've asked this question is even beyond the Supreme Court. Now,
yes.
if a person in other climes, in Western world, if a person is said to have done something negative in his past, whether the person has passed through electoral processes or not, there are processes at which you can follow to remove such a person from office, or the person honorably resigns, right? And I'm bringing such a situation to Nigeria. And I'm not saying that anything indicting has been found or would be found. I'm saying if it is, let's say it is, how does this affect the structure? Now, the president has immunity, right? And so he cannot be taken to court to say, oh, you have done XYZ in the United States. First of all, can it even be used? Can such a case that happened in the United States be used against him in Nigeria? And then there's also the question about, is it something that the Senate can also use, when we talk impeachment? Because the impeachment process is also very, what's the word now? It's stringent. It's not an easy process where you just wake up and impeach a president.
Before the court, whether a document obtained from the United States, if it is an indicting document, can be used by the president here. Answer will be no, because the president has immunity as provided by the Constitution, and cannot be questioned on any civil or criminal matter. So that's completely a no-no. Assuming there is any finding that is considered indicting or that is considered offensive to the interest of the president. Now, on the side of I just say again, because for you to talk about using such documents now, you have to talk of whether it is one of the grounds stated by the Constitution on which a person can be disqualified. Assuming you also kill the issue of whether what you are raising, issue of qualification, is a pre-election matter or not a pre-election matter. If it is that the person is alleged to have committed a crime, is it a crime involving fraud or dishonesty? If the answer is yes, there is still the question of did it happen within the last 10 years before the election? That is, in less than 10 years before the date of the election. All of that are hurdles that have to be scaled by such claim before it can make any effect, or before it can even come to point of decision by the court.
So if a crime is committed 10 years ago or above, 10 years and above, does that mean that crime no longer holds any...
The purposes of electoral disqualification as defined by the Constitution, a crime committed 10 years and 1 day before the election is no longer... It's not what is defined by the Constitution as a person convicted for an offense involving fraud or dishonesty, because the law says if within the last 10 years before the election. So if it is 1 day after 10 years, it is beyond 10 years. For such thing to have the desired effect, which is the constitutional effect of disqualification, it has to have happened in less than 10 years within the period 10 years preceding the election, meaning less than 10 years before the election, not after 10 years before the election. So that is for judicial consideration. Now, on the side of the
National Assembly
impeachment process, impeachment process is fairly flexible. I say fairly flexible because on the long run, it is the National Assembly that determines whether a person in that office has engaged in a misconduct that is considered a gross misconduct. But it has to be gross misconduct within the office. If you ask me whether you can talk of, there was something that happened 40 years ago, and I will consider it bad enough that the person should be removed for it. He has not committed anything within the office. He has to commit a misconduct or engage in an act that constitutes a gross misconduct.
While in office, not outside of office.
While in office. So the issue of importing something that happened long ago will be another question altogether, whether it can scale the judicial test of a valid impeachment procedure.
All right.
So So that is that for the side of impeachment. And then again, you must have not less than one third. You must have not less than one third of the members to initiate the process, and you must be prepared to have up to two-thirds of members to approve at the end of the day before an impeachment proceeding can be successful. So that's how that one lies.
All right. So this may not have any legal impact. That is, if there are negative findings, may not have any legal impact on the president and the presidency. However, looking at it from a moral ground, how will this affect Nigeria as a nation? What do you think?
Well, morality is a fluid ground, and every man votes his opinion. My people have an expression that meaning that thoughts and impressions are like bags. Each man hangs his own and has his own. So it's difficult to measure on a general scale. However, if the president of a country is found, this entire discussion is based on the assumption that at the end something is found. The last time we had discussion on investigation and possibility of finding something, the finding was not what was feared. So assuming that the president is found to have engaged in what makes him morally questionable, it leaves that impression in the minds of each man considering Nigeria or embarrass the Nigerian state. So not morally.
Now that
there are hardly any activities and conduct in the realm of international interactions that are based on morality.
Okay. Now that you've mentioned our previous conversation, we also premised that conversation on probabilities. And when the documents were released, there were talks about forgery at the O level, right, where they said the school did not exist at the time, and that the dates were somewhat faked or forged. Now the question then is, in such a situation where legality does not hold, because some lawyers would argue, it did not submit that certificate to INEC, and it's not in the center of dispute. However, if that argument is true, that certificate at the O level is forged, does that not put a stain on the office of the president?
I'm afraid nothing done by a president puts a stain on the office of the president. It may put a stain on the reputation or image of the person as a person, but certainly not on the office. I say this because nothing done by the president in exercise of the powers of the president to be rendered illegal by the fact that there is an impression about the person holding that office or exercising that power. So no local or international transaction will be affected adversely by virtue of the fact that there is an impression about the person who is in an office exercising the official powers or the constitutional powers vested on the holder of that office. So I do not think, looking at the law, and it's safer to stay on the realm of legality on this matter.
All right.
I do not think it has any such impact on the nation or its activities.
We'll go for a quick commercial break. When we come back, we continue.
All right.
From the heart of the South region of Nigeria, Marketplace Apostles International
looking at issues concerning the release of documents by U.S. intelligence agencies, and as it relates to the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And we are saying, what if there are, reports or documents that may adversely affect the image of the President? Would it affect the office of the President? Would there be a process of removal? We're looking at all of this, and we are, because this is a conversation for development. We're preparing our minds, and for those who will be going looking at propaganda, we're trying to ensure that we stop propaganda even before it happens, and that is why I have invited over the phone a professor of law at the River State University. I'm talking about Ritchard Nwokocha. Thank you for staying tuned, and welcome back.
Thank you, God.
All right, so before we went for the break, went on that break, I asked a question, and the question had to do with if it will affect the office of the President if a negative document is released. And you said it would not, because an impression is not the same as legality. And so it brings us now to another conversation, and this time I want to ask, would it be a moral thing to resign? And if it is, would it be wrong? You've said that on this matter we should look at the legal part of it, but when Nigerians talk about it on social media, it's been trending on social media for months. When Nigerians talk about this on social media, they don't look at it from the angle of legality, they look at it from the angle of morality. So where do we put the balance in all of this?
It will always be morally upright behavior to resign if one is found morally questionable.
Okay.
It will always be a beautiful thing, a good thing. As to whether there is any likelihood of that happening, I think your guess will be the same as mine, I'm sure.
Okay.
As to whether anybody will resign office in Nigeria for a moral reason. For a legal reason, yes. Before legal proceedings are commenced against him, yes. But for moral reasons, it's a very rare thing in Nigeria.
Okay.
Last time was probably Kemi Adeosun at a point when valid issues of legality had been raised, and she resigned, and the resignation was accepted. And such other things. So whether it is likely, the probability of that is, I'm sure your guess is as good as mine.
Okay, so let's fast forward now to 2027. Some of these things that have been found, especially with the CSU, that may have certain negative effects, do you see them being used against the President in terms of rerunning or in terms of being re-elected? Is it going to be legally acceptable at the time?
It creates a personal burden. It creates a burden on that individual.
Okay.
For instance, you and I are going to determine who will be president in 2027.
Yeah.
Yeah, you and I are going to determine that. And at the point where the issue is for public decision, that is when anybody who has any moral question will have to answer for that. Because at that point, we're no longer talking legality, we're talking of how people will respond, what impressions people will have. Impressions determine people's voting pattern.
Okay.
Your belief and confidence as a person will deliver or solve our problems makes you to vote for him. It's entirely your impression, whether he does so at the end of the day or not, but your vote is informed by what you believe and what you are convinced that the person can do. Can any issue be used against the person? If a negative issue is raised that has legal value, and the person cannot be called to question now because of the office the person occupies, it can be raised subsequently. For instance, if it is something that disqualifies the person in law, it can be raised as a pre-election matter in the next election.
Okay.
So it will become an issue on which legal decision can be based or can emanate, and appropriate disqualification can take place in that circumstance, having been raised as a pre-election issue. and they haven't been established. Yes, a legal consequence can arise.
All right, then. Let's quickly get to or go to the Supreme Court. Today, I hear they have reserved judgment in the petition brought by the PDP against the president, electoral petition, and that of Labour Party against also the president. Can you explain how does it work in the Supreme Court? Because today they had the cases and now they are reserving judgment. Is that how it works?
In appeal court, that's exactly how they work. A party who is displeased with the decision of an earlier court or a lower court brings that decision for review by the appellate court. He files that decision together with the complaints he has about it. There, it's not like the trial court where parties call witness and they need evidence and to prove their case. They are simply asking the appellate court to take a look at the decision of this court and say whether it is supported by the fact that we are raised and the arguments, legal arguments that we are made in that case. So you just come to court, adopt your brief, which is your appeal brief, what you have filed. The other party adopts your response. You have about 20 minutes or thereabout to do what is called adumbration, which is outlining to the court briefly what your arguments really are, what your complaints really are that you have brought before the court, and what you think the court should look at. The other party have the same timeline. It's also left to you. You're also at liberty to just say, we have filed on so and so date, and we want the court to look at that and to decide on that. We adopt what we have filed.
Okay.
And your appeal is concluded, your argument is concluded. So the next thing for the court is to give date to respond to your arguments, which is judgment. So, yes, if what is adopted today is the main appeals and it is reserved for judgment, it means it is now for judgment, and the Supreme Court will inform the parties when it is ready and give judgment on what has been argued. But if what was taken today was only an application, for instance, to lead to adduce further evidence or present further evidence, and the court reserves, it is also reserved for the purpose for which it is reserved.
Okay.
But from what I have read in the media, unfortunately, I did not have access or opportunity to follow exactly what was going on in the court. If what was reported is that the main appeals have been heard, and one struck out and the other two reserved for judgment, it means the appeals have been heard.
Okay.
And the court will go through them and give date subsequently when it will give judgment on the appeals.
All right. Thank you very much, Barrister Nwokocha. Let's open the phone line so the listeners can contribute or ask questions. So if you're listening, this is where you get to join the conversation. 0817 923 0002 and 0817 923 0003. WhatsApp number is 0809 030 6416. And the question I have is, what are your thoughts? All of this, all of this journey to getting documents, to unravel certain things about the president, as we have heard, may not have legal, weight, may not hold much legal weight. So what is the need then? Why do we have to go into this expedition, this legal expedition? Is it so we could use it in 2027, or is it just for doing sake? To what benefit is it? How does this impact the Nigerian society? How does this impact the office of the president? And so many questions I have got to ask, but I'd like to get your view on this issue as we push the conversation for development a bit further. Because I would always argue, we've got pressing matters like the dollar beating the naira, like the price of petrol, rising and rising, like the sun in the morning. We've got issues, but then again, this is what usually draws attention when it makes headlines. I've got John Paul, and John Paul is calling from Ozwaba, so let's take a listen to John Paul. Hello, John Paul. Greetings to you. Welcome. Yeah, hi. Good evening.
So, from my own point of perspective,
please turn off your radio set. You don't have to listen to yourself.
Sorry.
All right, go ahead.
So, from what the barrister has just said, or professor, it means that with all what has happened for 10 years or thereabouts, the evidence cannot be admitted by the Supreme Court.
Yeah, something like
that.
That's what he said. That's what he said. Yes, that's what he said. Above 10 years and above.
And secondly, the court does not even look at moral justification in their own judgment.
Yeah.
So they will only base on technicality.
On legality, not technicalities. Legalities. Can you hear me? On legalities.
On legality.
Yeah, not technicalities. Legalities.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, John Paul. Prof, I was right? That's what you said. Not moral justification.
Yes, for purposes of determining whether a conviction disqualifies the person where conviction is proved and it relates to fraud or dishonesty.
Yeah.
It has to be within the time determined by law, because we are not fixing it, and it's not a moral question being fixed by morality.
All right.
The law defines what it considers a disqualifying factor, and it says if a person has been convicted within 10 years before the date of the election. So you cannot take it to beyond 10 years.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yes,
let's take another.
Of what the law says, and that's what the courts are defining.
Okay. All right. Let's take another call. Ilomba is calling from Artillery. Turn off your radio, please.
Color, I greet you.
I greet you right back.
Yeah. Is there one thing about me with this Buhari certificate?
We're not talking about Buhari's certificates.
Double standard in their judgment. And many ordinary people in the street have been questioning this for long. Because when it comes to people, they will be able to run and judge. When you reach other people, they give many different excuses why this will not be. We see what happened in Bayelsa, how they take away governor that win election in Bayelsa. Even in Imo State, many people are still questioning what happened in Imo State, because it's obvious that the Hope of the man do not even win primary election. In Imo State today, he become a governor. When we have such a standard of different.
When you say Ilomba, I'm always about the facts, and you know that. When you say he did not win primary election, what do you mean by that? He's recognized by his party. What do you mean? What do you mean by he did not win primary election? He was recognized, still recognized by his party.
But let me. What I mean is this: that they conducted primary election between Uche Nwokocha and the Hope of the man. And Hope of the man was lost publicly. It wasn't a high this administration and that day, the particular day that thing happened.
But then they went to court. But they went to court. Exactly. That's the point.
So what I'm saying is this. One will have double standard. Do you remember that this Abuja saga between Buhari and Obasanjo 2003? This Supreme Court said it to Buhari. He never won Abuja. So we will not forget.
Where are we going with all of you? You're mixing our conversation. I'm sorry, I've got to let you go because I think you're not getting the conversation we're talking about. But is it Ken from MOI? Welcome.
Good evening, Canada.
Yeah, is it Ken? Welcome.
If I hear you clear, I don't understand if you really ask your guest about the secondary certificate issue.
But I did. But you can ask him. He's on the phone. If you think I didn't ask him correctly, you can ask him yourself.
No, I want to really understand that area. Because you asked him if that particular secondary school certificate issue is not in contention, and it happens to be tendered in the court, that will be the fate of the masses or what will the court decide?
All right.
So I would like him to clear that area.
All right then.
Because as far as we know, then we are talking about article is talking about the Chicago certificate.
Okay.
Then on the process now, we hear another issue concerning his secondary school certificate that his certificate was issued before the school was established.
Okay.
So let him put us through.
All right then. He would answer, but let's listen to IK from Aba. IK from Aba, welcome.
Yes,
yeah, greetings to you.
Please, I want to ask the advisor. Can legality of the constitution of a particular country?
Sorry, what? Come again? Does what?
I said, because he said something about legality and depression.
All right.
I said, can legality of the court obstruct the constitution of a particular country?
What do you mean by obstruct? What do you mean by for a constitution to say something? That's what makes it legal. Legality is not outside the constitution.
Because now, let me take this instance now. I have a lawyer. The lawyer cannot master at some point very well. But the judges, they know that this thing the lawyer is talking is true. But maybe he's not presenting on time or through one way or the other. But they know that this is the truth. Can they brush it up?
No, because I'm going to let him answer, but I'm going to tell you straight up as well. No, because like we've heard so many times, the court is notified at Christmas. So the court will not give what you've not asked for. And for you to ask for something, you have to prove that you deserve what you've asked for. That's how the court works, and that's what the Constitution says.
Because when you, like this case now we are talking about, the truth is clear that there is fault somewhere. But maybe the presentation wasn't okay. I don't judge by this country. That is what the law says. But due to presentation, they will back off that it lacks evidence.
So it's not the court's fault. Anyways, you have to present your case very well. But thank you, IK. Thank you all the way from Aba. Back to you, Prof. Someone asked a question I asked you earlier, and the person was talking about the O-level certificate not being original and being what's it called now, being manipulated, and if that tendered in court will change the situation of things, even though it may not have been in the discourse in the first place.
As I answered on the first day, we talked about that particular issue.
Yeah.
We ask ourselves the question, what is the issue before the Supreme Court? The issue is that at the Court of Appeal, this matter was not before the Court of Appeal. And remember, the duty of the Supreme Court as an appellate court is to review what the Court of Appeal says, vis-a-vis what was tried before the Court of Appeal, and to determine whether the Court of Appeal was right or not. INEC is forged, or it's a fake document.
But I don't...
I mean the university certificate, because that's the only thing you are talking about. That's what is relevant to the case.
Okay.
So you say the certificate is submitted is forged or is fake, and you produce a document brought by the university in response to the question whether they gave him certificate. And that document proves that, yes, you and I discussed the document the other day. It's also available on the internet.
Yeah.
The school confirmed, yes, he was our student. Yes, he was the person we admitted. Yes, he wrote the exam and they showed the transcript showing his performance at 12 years. Yes, he is the person with issue certificate. Yes, he applied for a certificate replacement. No, we do not by ourselves print certificate replacements. When people apply, it is treated through our
vendors.
What do they call them?
Vendors.
Vendors, yes. Through our vendors. And they show other certificates which have slight differences. If you look at the logo of the other two certificates, there are differences. And they explain that this is because it comes from other vendors. If you are the court, on the question whether that certificate is fake or not, what will be your answer? If the issuer of the certificate says yes, we issued it through our usual method, through our normal method.
Okay.
But the main one we issue We deal with transcripts in our environment, not certificates, but at request we give. For replacement ones, we do it through vendors. If that is the question, will you say that the certificate presented?
Unfortunately, we're out of time, and I would have to pause you at this moment. But thank you very much for being on the show.
That's okay.
All right, then, Professor of Law, River State University.
Nigeria Info. Right back after this.